So what's the point in learning about these objects and why capacitors are so important? Well, they have many uses because what they can do is we can maybe supply a small amount of energy for a long time. And then what we can do is we can discharge this energy really, really quickly. Now, the advantage of the capacitor can be discharged and or charged up and discharged many times, which maybe a rechargeable battery can't. And they have certain uses, okay? First of all, they're used perhaps in circuits. And often in a circuit you might have perhaps an AC input, so some alternating current. And what you want to do is you want to convert this to DC, so you have a DC output. Now if we think about what this might look like on a graph, here we have the perhaps AC input, and effectively what we want to do is we want to make sure that this current only flows one direction around the circuit. Now we can do that by first of all introducing a diode. Now a diode means that the current will only flow in one direction, and therefore what we can do is if we have a diode in that circuit, this graph tends to look a bit more like this. Okay, but that's kind of a rubbish graph, or a kind of a rubbish kind of power supply for maybe to charge a mobile phone. And what we need to do is have a more kind of constant supply. So what we can then do is we can add in our capacitor. So here's our capacitor, and what this does is it can be charged up by this current, and then rather than the kind of current decreasing really quickly, what we have is the current decreases more slowly with time, perhaps till the circuit is charged up again, and then that current decreases. And what we're doing is effectively we're smoothing the power supply with this capacitor and diode in series. So that is one use of capacitors. Now their other use is when we want to have a lot of power effectively given out in a short amount of time. Now this could be perhaps something like a traditional camera flash, where what you want to do is maybe have a 9-volt battery, so kind of the normal thing that you might find inside a camera. And what this does is it charges up over a long amount of time, so maybe several seconds, but it can then release all of that energy in a very small amount of time. Now effectively, if you have a load of energy which is released in a small amount of time, this gives us something which has a really high power, and therefore it can maybe light up a whole room, whereas a normal kind of torch wouldn't do that. This is also useful in things like fusion reactors. So in a fusion reactor we can charge up a whole bank of capacitors over many minutes, and what we can then do is release all that energy in a small amount of time. And effectively what we can then have is something like a terawatt of power, which is the kind of thing that we need to do to actually bring these kind of positive charges of protons together to actually fuse. And also it can be used as a power supply for a short amount of time. So inside perhaps your mobile phone, or even inside your laptop or your computer, there'll be a load of capacitors, and if the AC power supply which is powering your device is interrupted, there's just enough energy to stop your laptop turning off completely. So we can use them as well as a very short-term power supply. But you need to read up on this, okay? It's just a load of facts that you need to know, and you need to know why capacitors are useful in everyday life.